This next question asks about the evolution of spite. Are there any real examples? And it seems like it might be difficult to find in nature, and that's absolutely true. You don't expect to see a lot of spite because remember, spiteful behavior is driving your own fitness down, and it's decreasing the fitness of the other individual. So you wouldn't expect to see a whole bunch of it because both individuals are negatively affected. So it's probably even less common than altruism, where altruism, you're driving your own fitness down, but you're increasing the fitness of another individual. So we don't expect to see a lot of spiteful behavior, but we have seen it. Obviously, humans exhibit spiteful behavior. We also see it in chimps have been shown to exhibit spiteful behavior, capuchin monkeys. I have a picture here of an article that goes to an article on spite in capuchin monkeys. They've also shown it in bacteria. So bacteria, and I believe plants, well, I know plants can do this, but I think it's been shown in plants to be spiteful as well. They can produce toxins, and those toxins can inhibit growth of other individuals around them. But it can also inhibit their own growth. But the thing is, if it inhibits their own growth a little bit less than it inhibits those around them, it's still decreasing their own fitness as opposed to if they didn't do it at all, but it's decreasing the fitness of other individuals around them even more. So producing these chemicals that can inhibit growth of others is another example of the spiteful behavior. So we do see examples of it, but again, not super common in nature. This question is asking me to explain this figure. So in this figure, we've got these coalition of male turkeys, but what that means is they're cooperating with one another to court the female. But only one of them, only the dominant male, is going to get to mate with the female. The subordinate male, in most cases, will not get to mate. And then what it's doing on our graph over here is it's looking at the relatedness between different individuals in a population. So if I was to randomly pick or let's just say take one of my males and randomly select somebody else from the population and ask how related are they to this particular male. On average, they're not related, right? They're close to zero. So the background relatedness is about zero. These two males that are part of the coalition, their relatedness to one another is a little bit over 0.4, about 0.42. That's very high. Remember, full siblings are going to be like 0.5. So they're almost full siblings, not quite. They're much more related than half siblings. So half siblings here usually are on average about 0.25. And so what you're saying here is that these males that are part of the coalition are highly related to one another. And so what that means then is that the males that are participating in this are actually increasing their own fitness. So even if you're the subordinate male, you're getting a lot of genes into the next generation by being part of this coalition because you're so highly related to the male that's actually mating with the female. And then, of course, other studies show that it's very often the case that the male that is the subordinate is more likely to be a dominant male later and then be able to produce directly. So right now he's getting some indirect fitness through his kin. The question is asking about starlings and murmurations, which are those sort of bizarre patterns that we see when groups of starlings and some other species fly through the air. And it looks sometimes like they're creating these crazy patterns where they get further apart and closer together. What they found is that particular phenomena where it looks like they're getting further and closer together is really not true. It's the result of reflecting sort of a 3D object onto our 2D world as we look at it. Because what they find is that most of the birds within that murmuration are actually sort of equally distant from one another. So they have pretty consistent distance and also speed. They are typically not changing that a whole lot. And what they're basically doing is each one of them is coordinating its movements with about 7 individuals around it, as opposed to sort of the whole group. And so they've done some modeling to show that if individuals coordinate with 7 other individuals, you can get those kinds of patterns that we see. Now, as far as why we see murmurations, there's a lot of the theories about why you would have a murmuration are similar to the ones that you would have when you just look at collective and cooperative roosting behavior. Cooperative roosting or communal roosting is where, like at night, you might see a whole bunch of egrets or other birds going to one area to stay the night, and then they disperse again the next day. One of the things they find, it appears that birds that roost together probably lower their energy demands in terms of thermoregulation. So being in a large group helps you to thermoregulate a little bit better. Another thing that is helpful is being a part of a large group can also reduce predation. Not only will a predatory bird be less likely to go after a large group, but if you are also in the middle of a large group, then you are even more protected. A third thing that can happen is transfer of information. So one of the things they found when roost together at night, what they'll find is if two birds are, let's say, are roosting next to each other, and bird A had a good day, found a whole bunch of food, and bird B did not. Bird B had a pretty lousy day as far as finding food. Tomorrow, when bird A and B go out, bird B is more likely to go in the same direction that bird A goes. So bird B is going to follow bird A because it's got information from that other bird about the fact that it had a better foraging day than it, and then it uses that information to make its foraging decision the next day. So they might be transferring information about food sources, risk, lots of other things about the environment. So this is asking what makes an animal a defector. We kind of talked about that a little bit ago. That is where essentially an animal is going to be a selfish individual. So we've got two individuals interacting with one another. One might be a cooperator and the other might be selfish. And in this case, we're calling that selfish individual a defector. What it's looking at here is it's asking about sort of the ability of reciprocity to evolve. So it says here, they had assumed that reciprocity would be commonly seen, not the other way around. Here's why reciprocity is hard to find. If you look at that matrix that we looked at a little bit ago, so here if we have two cooperative individuals, that's reciprocity right there. They have this payoff, right? But if I have a defector in the population and it is out and it finds a cooperator, it actually has a better payoff. So defectors in a population where there's a bunch of cooperators actually do better. Although it seems like reciprocity would evolve because both individuals are doing better, they're only doing better if they don't interact with a defector. Because look over here, if a cooperator interacts with a defector, it does way worse. So two cooperators, great, they do well. But if a cooperator meets a defector, it does really awful. A defector always does best. So we expect the evolution of selfish behavior and these defectors as opposed to cooperators and reciprocity.